Huh? What? Video? Oh, okay. Yeah. Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. Yeah, I've heard of that one. That's a silly meme game, right? Now, if you keep up with video game discourse when this game dropped, it was either the coolest game in the world or a joke according to everything I had heard, with very little room for in-betweens. On Steam though, we're sitting on a juicy 90% score for this, so there's something here, right? Yeah, but why are all these positive reviews just talking about chaos? What's going on? Let's get to the bottom of this. Is Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin just some kind of silly meme game? Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise, or Stranger of Paradise as I'll be calling it from here on out, was an idea I don't think anyone saw coming. Part of the reason this game exists was to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the game that started it all, Final Fantasy I on the NES. The inciting idea for this game seems to have come about by longtime Final Fantasy veteran and sometimes hated GAC lover Tetsuya Nomura. In an interview with the game's producer, Jin Fujiwara, he said, quote, "A while ago, Mr. Nomura had given me the concept of a game where you fight your way through different areas, and that came together with this gritty story of an angry man that he had been working on." Sure, angry. That sounds promising. For this anniversary event, there were several projects Squeenix announced, including my beloved Pixel remasters, but Stranger of Paradise felt a little unique in that it was the only distinctly new thing to come out that year for Final Fantasy. So they teamed up with Koei Tecmo and launched the trailer heard round the world.
I only know one thing. I want to kill Chaos. This is the Shrine of Chaos. He's here. We just have to hunt him down. Feel the pain!
Right. Okay, so let's get this out of the way right out of the gate. Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise was a game that stumbled into the public consciousness. The first big blow to the game was releasing only a month after Elden Ring and having a very similar combat style at a glance. Couple that with the initial trailer for the game having said the word chaos, by my math, once every 19 seconds on average, or the hero yelling bullshit and turning on Japanese Limp Bizkit, and you have a recipe for maybe not the game of the year, maybe not even the game most people picture when they think Final Fantasy. But we don't have your typical Final Fantasy protagonist here. Instead, we have Jack. With Jack's hyper-masculine line reads and the seemingly very silly plot, Stranger of Paradise felt destined to be one of those games that everyone kind of just makes fun of on Twitter, X, but no one actually plays. Not me though. I was the weirdo that picked it up. So was it as silly or bad as the trailer led many to believe? Well, yes and no. The cast grunts instead of speaking so much in the first hour that I decided to make you this supercut of it.
Bullshit.
The amount of grunts this cast does would make Tim Allen blush. But this all begs the question, what really is Stranger of Paradise? Well, it's a prequel, kinda. It's a silly meme game, but is there anything else to it? Does it have any redeeming qualities outside of being kind of funny in a cringy way? And I don't know, this spooky door? Actually, yeah. The first thing is, yeah, item number 1 is Stranger of Paradise's combat is excellent. Before I get into it, know that this particular game was developed between Square Enix and Koei Tecmo, as I said earlier. In particular, Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja division. You might know Team Ninja from Nioh or Ninja Gaiden, and if you don't know either of those, then know that these are the folks who put together some really acclaimed action games. They also made Dead or Alive.
What the hell? Oh my god!
Okay, so Team Ninja has chops, and makes games like this sometimes. That's great. But we need to ask ourselves a more important question. How will I, the player, go about actively killing chaos? Well, the answer is Souls-like combat. For any of you who've played a Souls-like game, especially Nioh, this should be pretty much immediately familiar in the gameplay department. If you haven't, the genre is known for action gameplay wrapped up in careful, deliberate pacing. Quick reactions are good, but a lot of the staples rely on carefully learning enemies' patterns and attacks. This is enforced further by very committal button presses. If you start to swing your sword, you will not be able to cancel that animation. The game doesn't let you back away from your mistakes. As a result, the genre has a bit of a reputation as being hardcore. I would argue that that's not the case, but that's another video for another time. What makes Stranger of Paradise so interesting is that you can select your difficulty at the beginning, something the genre almost never allows. That doesn't mean this is a baby game, but it does mean it's a little bit more approachable for people who might not be as big into the action game genre. Stranger of Paradise has two particular things that set it apart in terms of being an action combat game. You'll be doing the usual action game fare, sure, attacking with different input combinations for skills, dodging, blocking attacks, having a limited number of heals to use, and so on. All of this is topped off with the fact that you feel like a wrecking ball when you're moving through the stage. The developers really nailed Jack feeling like a force of nature. Team Ninja has a pedigree for action games, you see, and this one is no different. It feels like a joy to play. There's a few unique flourishes that Stranger of Paradise has, though. One is breaking an enemy's stamina before depleting their health, and you'll be given a particularly brutal finisher by Jack. These finishers will restore his magical ability, so playing smart and breaking enemy stamina for the finishing moves means you get more special moves to break more stamina, and so on. If you do it right, it means there's very little downtime as you tear through the levels. The second is the Soul Shield. It's the game's take on the parry. As you hold down the move, you lose stamina rapidly. A depleted stamina meter means Jack sits there and has to regain it and can take some serious damage while you wait. But in return, parry will fully block most any attack coming your way, meaning that if you use this move intelligently, you can quickly parry almost anything. Suddenly, bosses with lasers that cover the screen are a lot less scary. To add another layer to that though, some spells can be stolen when using this skill. So not only do you stop a huge incoming attack, you can also hurl that same attack back at the enemy. It's incredibly satisfying and can truly turn some fights around that you think you might have lost. While an action-based Final Fantasy game isn't something the series is known for until lately, much of the identity of the series sticks around. In fact, perhaps because of this anniversary celebration, the game sort of permeates everything Final Fantasy. Iconic monsters you know and love if you're a series diehard will make their appearances. Look, it's the bomb, goblins, bats, not you, curls, ogres, and more. The game's class system that's been around since the third entry is also in full force here, and it's absolutely the heart and soul of why I had so much fun playing this game. So, as you play Stranger of Paradise, you begin to unlock the game's classes. You start with some basics: monk, warrior, black mage. But as you climb up the skill trees, you'll begin unlocking advanced classes. Thought thief was cool? Well, how about ninja? Want to cast even more spells? Why not level up your black mage and white mage classes to unlock the sage? Time to discover how deliciously you can live with all that magic. Spoiler, very deliciously. All the classes play wildly different, and best I can tell are all pretty viable if you invest into them by leveling up and equipping the right gear. Each class feels unique even when they share weapons because they all have their unique skill. I liked Ninja's scroll magic a lot, but the thief's ability to steal literal spells from enemies and cast them back onto your opponent's face meant that I had a good reason to not completely abandon the job even as advanced ones rolled around. Unlocking jobs was never much of a grind either, thanks to being able to use anima stones, a currency you'll earn from side missions. Alternatively, you can do what I did and complete missions as a class you haven't tried yet to further unlock the trees. It makes you go out of your comfort zone a little, and it makes some fights probably harder than they need to be, but the game very clearly encourages experimentation. You can have 2 job classes equipped, and on the fly you can swap between them using the triangle button. Jack has a voice read for this. If you just wail on the button while moving along the map, you can play my favorite game. It's called This Is the One, Alright, Time for a Change.
Alright, time for a change. Alright, this is the one. Time for a change. This is the one. Time for a change. Time for a change. All right. This is the one. All right. Time for a change. This is the one. All right. Time for a change. Time for a change. Time for a change.
Each class has their own unique ability, and each weapon type can have different moves mapped to different input combinations. The possibilities are incredibly telescopic. If you're the type that worries about expression in their RPG, I feel like this is the game to play. All these systems play together in a very harmonious way. Want to be a two-handed sword-wielding dragoon who can switch to being a sword and shield paladin? Awesome. Stranger of Paradise is here for it. Your AI-controlled party members will also unlock classes as you play, so you can have them fill in gaps in your game plan, meaning that you aren't likely to find a lot of combinations that won't work as long as you balance the party around what you want to play. So in practice, you can get combinations like a Dark Knight who hurts himself to do extra damage with his two-handed sword, slashing and being angry, and then switch to White Mage and begin healing yourself to undo the damage inflicted, all while still being angry. Jack is going to be angry either way. That's our Jack. In Team Ninja's other titles, like Neo, every enemy you defeat explodes like a piñata of items. Is it better than what you have on at the moment? There's no way of telling aside from indiscriminately going around like a rogue Roomba sweeping up all the gear as it drops. Stranger of Paradise runs on the same vacuum first, questions later logic that Neo runs on so well. Think Diablo if you play Diablo, but somehow even more stuff? Or perhaps just less impactful stuff. At any time, you can open your menu to see which items you've picked up are better and change gear accordingly. And in a mission, dozens of items will be picked up, some of which are obsolete the very moment you grab them, such is the nature of random loot. Then the mission ends and you find you've collected maybe 3 dozen items just for that run. The game seems to know this and added an auto-dismantle items option in a later patch to help deal with the sheer volume of trash items you'll be collecting on each stage. So be sure to adjust that level between missions. Each piece of equipment will typically have several attributes to parse outside of just damage or defense. These can include stat boosts, increases in your class affinities, and you can even unlock new combo abilities for specific classes. Because of this, it can make more sense to take a slightly weaker weapon if you want to trade off a higher percentage affinity or moves for your current class. To say you can get granular with this equipment system though is an understatement. More troubling, however, is that every new stage has a new minimum gear level, so you won't be sitting on items for hardly any time at all. Most gear will be irrelevant power-wise on the very next stage you play, because the next area will usually be a few levels higher and the gear drops will too. That means getting attached to any one piece of gear can be a bit of a fool's errand if you aren't planning on hanging around for in-game content, because ultimately, this really cool shiny sword is gonna be replaced. It also means spending large chunks of time combing through the gear for each of your party members. That's 4 party members worth of gear, and Jack, who actually gets 2 sets, one for each class he chooses, for a total of 6 loadouts to manage. Each character will have up to 7 equipment slots, which means that you can have 42 micro decisions to make anytime you open your equipment menu, which will be often enough given how much gear drops. This is the part where I'm going to be absolutely honest and say I gave up on this system about 3 hours into the game. It is awesome that they put all this stuff in here, and I bet there's someone on Game FAQs right now with an amazing build that breaks the game. But it doesn't work for me. I have an auto button, you see. Yes, it really gives everyone a loadout that's kind of suboptimal, but the numbers all go up enough that you don't have to sweat it, at least on standard difficulty. So I went with that and did not look back. Oh, also Jack can wear a fedora. I'm not sure how this helps protect him in a real sense, but if you run around with that fedora, a long coat, and a samurai sword, you can just tell that Jack has studied the blade. The biggest issue I took from this system was that it made finding gear in treasure chests or that dropped from difficult enemies feel effectively the same as gear that drops from everything else. By having equipment in a constant churn, you don't really get a feeling of getting attached to a cool sword or a moment of surprise when your effort pays off. There's no real reward for exploring because it all turns into the same beige mush of equipment. Oh, that sound means my complaining quota has been met for this section and I am not allowed to complain anymore. So let's talk about something really cool about Stranger of Paradise. While I have my complaints about some aspects, for the most part, running around levels was pretty satisfying in Stranger of Paradise. Many stages are labeled as different dimensions, and each of those will correspond with a different mainline title in the series. I honestly didn't read level descriptions too closely at first, which, as an aside, you should do because they contain really interesting stuff that the game wants to tell you, and doesn't really tell you in the narrative. You have to read these stages. Anyway, you slowly come down with a sense of deja vu for all these locales. The Wicked Arbor is a remixed approach / homage to the first forest from Final Fantasy IX. The Flying Fortress is clearly taking inspiration from the Tower of Babel in Final Fantasy IV. All the locations are lovely on their own, but they have a nice little if you know style callback to the Final Fantasy dungeons from past games. The Pirate's Hideout? This is almost certainly the iconic newbie dungeon Sastasha from Final Fantasy XIV. This facility? Yeah baby, that's the Mako reactor from Final Fantasy VII. While the Final Fantasy series often makes callbacks like the victory fanfare, chocobos, bombs, the whole of Stranger of Paradise feels much more like a big collage of all these things wrapped up wholly into a weird action game skin, and all of that is topped off with the music. I'm not going to bury the lead here, I really liked the music. Going through the soundtrack, you'll see lots of the word motif pop up over and over again. This game takes all those classic Final Fantasy songs and adds new depth to them, and it's a really cool result. As a series celebrated by many fans as having some of the best music, hearing these new, interesting takes is great. Primarily composed by Naoshi Mizuta. Oh, that can't be it. Did I get it on the first try?
Naoshi Mizuta.
Kinda? Anyway, all of these songs, while not original, are fun, fresh takes on these old motifs. You don't need to know the original song to appreciate these compositions, but if you do, ooh. If Naoshi's name sounds familiar, it's because he's one of the more hardworking but less appreciated composers in the Squeenix docket for some time now. He's been responsible for most of Final Fantasy XI's soundtrack, as well as the 13 sequels. Some of these rearrangements are quite inspired. For me, my far and away favorite is the battle theme from The Fiend Merilith. Ethereal vocals swell above the heavy drum and horn arrangement to bring that classic song crashing into the shores of something completely new. I have been legit listening to this song on my way to work. I am getting too pumped for my job, but that's okay. Listen to the difference. And there's something to be said for the classic 8-bit titles, absolutely, to be sure. And yeah, you could level the argument here that these songs, as they are mostly built on the backs of already established classics, but honestly, these reworks stand on their own if you ask me, but I can't be removed from nostalgia, so don't take my word for it. The original tracks they wrote for this game are incredible too. I mean, you have to understand, they wrote a Linkin Park style song for this game. Linkin Park style, and they did it unironically in 2022, and it's good. If you have a tolerance for nu metal, I do. If you do, it's good. I mean, don't just listen to it. Look, even if you don't plan on playing this game, see if you find a classic motif you love in this soundtrack and give a listen to some of these reworks. Less exciting than the music, though, is the act of actually getting through the levels where the music is playing. Now, all the stages look nice and are great to look at, but largely speaking, they're little more than corridors with tiny detours. Some areas even wrap around themselves into labyrinthian tangles, but unlike most Souls-like staples in the genre, there's very little in the way of sightlines to help these spaces feel natural. And while I appreciate the lush green forestry or the dank corridors that the journey takes you through, either I was led along by the nose in a fairly straight line, or I bumbled through until I stumbled into the boss door. Having these stages in small, bite-sized levels means Things typical for the genre like unlocking shortcuts aren't really very rewarding because it doesn't really represent a future use case. Yeah, you can get back to your earlier cubes, this game's version of a bonfire, but it does little in the way of making it feel like a truly lived-in place. The other catch is getting lost is rarely rewarded. As I mentioned earlier, gear is in huge supply, so anything you find in a chest off the beaten path just gets tossed into the pile with all the other garbage you've Roomba'd up in your adventure. Now, an action Final Fantasy might ring a bell thanks to the release this summer of the 16th mainline entry in the series, the very aptly named Final Fantasy XVI. The series has been inching ever closer to being an action game in perhaps the most glacial way possible. I bring this up because Square used to actually switch mechanics between their Final Fantasies back in the day. One was story-driven and the next was more systematic. Final Fantasy IV had an epic tale of good, evil, romance, character drama, and feelings with a pretty run-of-the-mill combat system. But then 5 rolled in like, we have a job system that people will be talking about several years later in terms of how expressive it is. But we did name the villain X-Death, so don't set your expectations high for the story. Well, in that sense, Final Fantasy XVI is the game with the huge set pieces, and Stranger of Paradise is over here with the craziest job system I've seen in a Souls-like ever, and it's amazing. It's brilliant and deep and lets you play however you like, but I'm repeating myself now. The thing is, the story, well, to get to the story I probably should start from the beginning, and in order for that to happen to the fullest, I'm gonna go into the spoiler zone. Now, be warned, this isn't like other spoiler zones. This is a modern, recent game. This is one of the cases where I assume you haven't played it, and if you have any interest, I suggest you do, and just skip the rest of the video. It's been really cool having you around. Kisses for you. If you have a slight inkling you play this, I encourage you to pick it up at whatever price feels fair to you because you're in for a really crazy ride as far as stories are concerned. And if you do want to join me, well, let's go into the spoiler portal. Oh, and if you sign down here, this is just confirming that you don't get a cookie unless you're fine emotionally with the spoilers that are going to be contained within. It's a legal thing. Stranger of Paradise occupies a very weird place in the Final Fantasy canon. It exists as a story in the universe of Final Fantasy I. Kinda? It goes places. Non-canonical places. And it goes to those places with a hero who will skip the cutscenes for you.
It will remain a dream so long as I live. Who I am.
I don't give a fuck who you are!
We open on an incredible and brutal cutscene that shows the knight Garland kidnapping the Princess Sarah. This is one of the inciting incidents of the original NES game Final Fantasy I, now rendered in gorgeous 3D. This version of Garland is cruel, pure evil. He's crushing guards like they're playthings in his way. Blood all over the halls, darkness swelling around him, and the remaining castle guards, cowed by his might, shrink away in fear. Then, inexplicably, we're placed into the shoes of Jack. So this is Jack, and Jack hates chaos. When I say hates, I mean he really hates it. It is his main motivation to kill chaos for 80% of this game. Want to chat about the weather? No time. We gotta go kill chaos. We battle Tiamat in epic, angry combat, and there's zero explanation of how we got here or why. 1 minute you're hitting OK in the tooltip, and the next thing you're smacking a dragon Hydra thing. You know what? Before I go on, a search says this script has used the word angry 5 times already. I'm going to go ahead and add what I'm going to call the implied angry clause. If I say Jack is doing anything in the story, go ahead and assume that he is also very angry while doing it. Even if I say he is sad, know that he is also somehow angry. This will allow me to use the word only when it is truly, truly relevant, and Jack is absolutely filled with rage. Anyway, Tiamat seems to best our team with a combat trick, and we dip to black. So what do you do from there? Obviously, you open on a wheat field with Jack in it while Frank Sinatra's My Way plays. And if that sounds like a transition born from a fever dream, know that I'm not really cutting out any detail. just kind of how this game is. Now, I want you to see this scene because the impact of it is very strange, but My Way is very copywritten music, so we're gonna try with my version of My Way, My Way, and I bet that'll be just as good. And now, the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. Nope, never mind. Nope. Just watch this in silence. It's cool. It's fine. Fine this way. One inexplicable wheat field later, we're at the gate to the kingdom of Cornelia, with no memory of who we are outside of a burning desire to kill chaos, and we meet these two bozos. These are our friends, or they will be, Jeb and Ash. What is their deep backstory? Well, they all sensed each other, and thanks to having crystals that I think vibrate when other crystals are near. It's like a pager, but for chaos killing. Did I just say the word pager in 2023? What is wrong with me? Anyway, they knuckle bump about it. Then they all agree killing chaos sounds like the only thing they'd like to do, and so it is settled. They're also the only ones in this world dressed like they walked off a fashion runway, but I don't know if that's purposeful or if that's just Final Fantasy being Final Fantasy. It's hard to tell. Like, it could be a metaphor for them being strangers, but I mean, it could also just be they dress like this because they're Final Fantasy protagonists. The screen fades to black and tells us that the three of them do adventures for the king. Cool adventures with monsters and stuff, but you don't see any of that. Just trust him, it was very cool. No joke, that's the whole, it just tells you and not shows you. That's the whole setup. Their adventure, their bonding time, we skip that. To say this is a weak start narratively feels like a little bit of an understatement, but if you were beginning to lose interest, the game immediately reels you back in with some more interesting character growth.
What? Need something for that?
It's just a scratch. Nothing a little spit can't heal.
Jeb, Ash, and the remainder of the characters you meet all really kind of lack in comparison to Jack. They don't get these little character moments like this. There's some moments of little bits of growth, but I don't think any of the other characters really get past the surface level. I didn't feel like I got to know them. This story isn't very interested in them being anything more than a foil to Jack. So you can kind of forgive them for giving such a laissez-faire entrance to these characters because you're not really supposed to worry about them too much. The game falls into something resembling a traditional RPG for a bit while you're introduced to the world. You meet the king, get quests, the chancellor's stuffy, the princess is cheery and just rocking out on the loot for the townsfolk. This is Princess Sarah, the one we saw get kidnapped at the beginning. Well, she's not kidnapped now. She has a bubbly and naive personality, which contrasts nicely to Jack's gruff grunt boy energy in nearly every way. Sarah is apparently looking for the Knight Garland, who wears an imposing helmet. Now that sounds familiar. There's generic NPCs as well, walking around, talking about vaguely plot-relevant things. The townsfolk hope Jack can rid the world of chaos, and you can chat some of them up from a menu option, but I can't say it's a particularly thrilling thing to do, but it still feels a little like a classic Final Fantasy game. They also retain the long-standing, old-school RPG tradition of saying something almost useful, but makes you wonder why they even said it.
I heard there are monsters out there what use their cunning to outwit their prey. Best keep your wits about you on the road, Jack.
The king asks you to clear the Chaos Shrine to the north of the castle, and everything for the next hour or so is basically the inciting incident for our heroes. And I think where about 99% of the memes in this game come from. Chaos is a topic throughout, but he is spoken of exhaustively here in the beginning section. Don't believe me?
Chaos. Chaos.
Chaos.
We're here to kill chaos.
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 Chaos. Chaos.
Chaos. Looks like chaos has been waiting for us.
As you make your way through the Chaos Shrine, you finally reach the end when, oh, who is sitting there in the big sinister chair? Why, is this Garland, the villain from the first Final Fantasy? Well, in this case, it turns out to be Neon, a young lady who wears bandages and a sailor dress. So why was she dressed as Garland? Well, Neon took on the mantle of chaos because, just let me get this straight, there isn't actually an entity called Chaos. It's more like a boogeyman or an urban legend. But if she went through the work of becoming known as Chaos and someone killed her, society would begin to heal, knowing that they had overcome an invisible burden? Now, this plan has so many holes it would make terrible curtains. Exquisite cheese, but terrible curtains. Jack, of course, is not having any of this. The iconic scene we all know and love follows.
Bullshit.
In Jack's defense, her plan is sort of bullshit. Neon decides that Jack seems maybe like he's onto something with this whole brooding angle and challenges him to prove to her that chaos is real. Well, that's all Jack needs to hear. It's time to fist bump about it, gang. Now, the legend says 4 Warriors of Light will come bearing crystals and save the world, so hey, we have one box checked. The only tiny issue is that our crystals are pitch black, like an edgier, angrier version of a crystal. With our full party assembled, we head off to stop pirates in the town of Provoca, which mirrors roughly how Final Fantasy I moves the story along. And after fighting pirate captain Bike, we're given our first really big curveball. We're told to go meet Astos, king of the Dark Elves. Now Astos, for those of you who haven't played the first Final Fantasy, was this guy. He was a minor boss in the first Final Fantasy who tricks the party into retrieving for him a crown. Now, the Final Fantasy I party does not like that they have been tricked, so they beat the snot out of him. End of story, case closed, now they have the crown. The Warriors of Light clowned on that nerd. But now he looks like this.
Oh no, he's hot!
Because, sure, and he has a much bigger role to play. But you won't have to worry about him explaining anything because Jack cuts him off. Like I said earlier, he has a real habit of doing this. Never worry for a moment that you need to skip a cutscene with Jack around. He's got your back. The story goes through the motions here of being a kind of normal adventure. Astos tells us we need to defeat the 4 fiends and zaps us into a space station because, hey, why not? It's there that we encounter Tiamat. Normally the 4th fiend we fight in the original game, but now the 1st, and also the thing we fought in the intro segment. So there's that. This is the first sign that they're very interested in subverting your expectations from the first game. And Jack, now knowing that the creature has a trick, this time does not fall for it, and we defeat Tiamat. Defeating them will reveal our 5th and final member, Sophia. And that makes 5, which, another curveball, that messes up the prophecy about 4 Warriors of Light. Obviously, this is another big departure from Final Fantasy I, and by now, certainly the last clue you'd probably need to figure out how much this game plans going really off script with the story. The more you play, the more it slowly shows its hand. This is a retelling / prequel / side story / fanfic set in a multi-dimensional universe where potential alien beings, time loops, rifts into other Final Fantasy games, and more are all under the thrall of a small group of egomaniac, advanced future wizard people. Now, normally when I talk about the story of a game, I tend to dole it out informationally the way the game does for you, the player. But nothing about the way this game dispenses information really lends to that feeling of being a concise retelling. So instead, I'm going to untangle all of this for you and present it in a much clearer way. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to need to talk to you about Lufinians. Okay, so Cornelia, the castle town we began in, was a nation once at war with neighboring Lufinia. And after years of war, Lufinia one day just vanished. It turns out they met, as best I can tell, some sort of interdimensional being they refer to as the Collaborator. Ooh. The Collaborator agreed to show the people of Lufinia how to make a haven of their own creation using their ability to reset the world and manipulate time. So the Lufinians put themselves in a pocket dimension. Sure, with this eldritch knowledge, they designed hats that look like DNA strands. And they began looping the world in order to keep their paradise active. You see, They abhor the darkness, but it is a natural byproduct of making unlimited light for themselves, so they need to keep it in balance, continually. The cost of making this paradise is quite high. They had to make a bargain with their collaborator, so that they can do, I assume, only friendly stuff by sending them their excess energy. Darkness is created as well as a byproduct, and this is a real problem for the Lufinians. So they need to exert whatever means in order to keep them in harmony. In this way, Lufinia reset the world anytime things go too far out of balance. A bit of an existential nightmare for the people not realizing they're in a time loop, but a great deal for the Lufinians in their pocket dimension. Still, resetting is a huge use of energy and only for emergencies. So as a stopgap, Lufinia came up with the Stranger Project. Jack and his compatriots are such strangers. Individuals sent to the world, given crystals that contain their memories, and told to destroy darkness and chaos in order to keep the world harmonious. Their memories are wiped to ensure they keep the focus of their mission singular. To this end, they modified a dark elf named Astos to help them in their mission. Thus, in turn, Jack becomes a memoryless violence janitor for the Lufinians. His desire to kill chaos is literally written into his blank brain when he arrives back on the surface. Canonically, Jack doesn't have a whole ton of character because they're turning his brain into scrambled eggs. So it turns out it wasn't just fashion. The clothes were also, I guess, a real actual metaphor for them being strangers in this world. But it's also Final Fantasy fashion. It just is. These loops continue for some time until the Lufinians come to the realization that all the chaos and darkness that's really been bugging them so much is actually the result of humanity's collective unconsciousness putting bad vibes into the world. Without those normies being all icky, they'd be pretty much free of chaos. Since they really see the Cornelians and others as nothing more than cattle, they come to a very cold conclusion. Simply get rid of humanity. Yuck, humanity. Ew. More like dumb manatee. Am I right? Sorry, manatees. You didn't deserve that. I take that one back. I mean, look at him, he didn't do nothing wrong. This is the point where Jack, who's been getting his memory wiped, decides while still lucid to come up with a plan with his buddy Astos to put an end to all of this. Astos doesn't get his memory wiped since he must act as a guide for strangers, and so he puts the pieces together for Jack to undo the stranglehold Lufinia has on the world. This is sealed, as all great promises are, with a knuckle bump. Jack knows his memory is going to be reset, but he tells Astos that he will remember him. His friendship, he's hoping, is strong enough to make their bonds last. As is protocol, Jack gets his brain reset and Astos uses that time to go about putting their plan into action. In order to loosen Lufinian control, they need to start by breaking the system. The quickest way to do this would be to knock the balance of light and dark out of whack. So Jack and crew set about killing the 4 elemental fiends. Of course, a freshly memory-wiped Jack thinks this is simply in order to destroy chaos. This would be, I guess, closest to his only reason for living after the Lufinians put him in for a quick reset. So Astos, knowing who the party is, beseeches us to fight and defeat the 4 elemental fiends. Jack, being a little too optimistic that he would remember him, clearly doesn't recognize Astos at all, and in fact, cuts off his friend with the cold anger of, well, a stranger.
And we dark elves...
Just tell us about the crystals. That's all I want to know.
We aren't handed the controls for Jack until all the pieces of the puzzle are put together, and Jack is completely confused about his own plan, so we, the players, are as well. Jack has already had his brain wiped so many times, been the cause of so much violence for countless loops, tearing up his mental state, that it's not very surprising that he's a bit gruff and hollow in terms of emotion. We just get to think of Jack as a weirdo who gets memories of people returned to him whenever he defeats a boss and black mist enters him or the party. Our party will proceed to go through the motions killing darkness while Astos seems shady, fully oblivious that we're the ones who asked him to do this. I was thinking, why doesn't Astos tell us the plan, but I can't see a world where the guy you don't remember telling you what your plan was really actually clicking, so yeah, Astos, way to read the room on that one. Astos might be upset that Jack doesn't remember him, but he is committed to their plan they made together. So as Jack and the team go about killing fiends and restoring crystals, it becomes apparent that this is in no way making the world a nicer place. Also, for each boss defeated, the aforementioned black mist will fire out of them and begins giving the party their memories back. Jack will sometimes see vague memories of past lives, but pushes them away because he's unwavering in his purpose. The rest of the party slowly remember their plan and agreement to help Jack defeat the Lufinians, but at no point does Jack question anything. His goal is singular and his consideration minimal.
We're forgetting things all the time.
I guess it's the price we have to pay for this strength.
Attachments to this world will just make it harder to do our duty. It's a mercy to forget.
The time loops and the trauma, I think, have done quite a number on him. After restoring all the crystals and defeating all the fiends, seas rage, winds die down, and the earth stops being fertile. It's not great, but hilariously, Jack is overwhelmingly confident about his choice to take the Shady Dark Elf's word on it.
I'm sure it's just the crystals doing their thing. Might take some time to get used to it, but I bet this is what this world is supposed to be like.
That's the sort of arrogance and failure that I strive to have in life. Imagine if I tried to fix your pool and the water turned to a murky green, and I had the gall to say, "Oh yeah, that's the pool just going through growing pains, all part of my carefully considered repair." At this point, despite Jack's insistence that the world's just getting in a nice spot thanks to his efforts, it becomes clear that the world is succumbing to darkness. Might I draw your attention to some of the small, subtle details that prove this? Monsters overrunning the city. People turning into monsters. What looks like a nightmarish darkness permeating the town, wrapping it in a blanket of unnatural light? So, finally catching on that maybe, just maybe, something might be going on, Jack decides to go find Astos and figure out what's up. We meet him on a floating continent. Looks familiar. And fight him. It's here that Astos actually catches us up to the aforementioned plot that I've been telling you this whole time, and gives his character his really, truly tragic backstory. Astos is a construct of the Lufinians. A dark elf is just a regular elf that's been genetically modified to serve Lufinian needs. Astos in particular is resisting the orders of the Lufinian at great risk to himself. He's, I'd say rightfully, full of anger at his mistreatment at the hands of his creators and their experiments, and it turns out that the Lufinians did a lot of experiments on him. He's also incredibly upset that Jack, the man who promised he wouldn't forget him, has absolutely forgotten him. Unable to control his sadness and emotions, and general rage about the situation, he loses control of his form and transforms into the Ultima weapon. Looks familiar. Here is where Astos on his deathbed finally reveals to Jack that he was helping him with his plan all along. Jack is still a little confused, but once the black mist enters him, he finally remembers it all. His job as a stranger, his decision to stop the Lufinians from their nightmarish plans. Astos' true regret seems to have been trusting Jack would remember him, though. You can tell he's really sad that his friend forgot him, even though he knew he would. We're finally given one final chance to say goodbye to Astos, but not as strangers, as a friend. Meanwhile, in Cornelia, things have gotten worse. We return to a dead king and queen, and more monsters than ever before, with Princess Sarah and a few guards cowering the castle as the monsters batter down the gates. Staying inside the keep would be suicide, so Jack and company decide to make a final stand in order to escape the city and regroup. As you enact this plan, a very large series of events goes down in quick succession. First, Princess Sarah dies. Ooh, that's not good. She seemed like a nice lady, and actually, through flashbacks, we discover Jack was the Night Garland she had been seeking all along, her former lover. Despite the time loops, she had a vague memory of him, thanks in part to a crystal he had gifted her long ago. Wow, another deathbed revelation. Upsetting. Well, Jack is understandably hurt by what he recently remembers to be his former lover's death, but hey, at least he has the party to lean on. Oh, wait, now they're trying to kill Jack. Now, this isn't them being overcome with evil. In fact, this is them trying to do something a little different. The last part of Jack's plan involved him becoming a vessel for darkness, for chaos. The Lufinians' technology prevented them from being afraid of a whole lot of things, but darkness, and by extent chaos, are fully outside of their understanding. In order to truly let darkness into his heart, however, Jack needs to have no worldly attachments, and to this end, Having a group of friends is definitely a worldly attachment. And so, against his will, and very upsettingly for him right after losing Sarah, Jack is made to kill the rest of the things tying him to any possible ability to be anything other than a vessel for chaos. With his friend's blood on his hands, Jack finally embraces the plan in full and begins his journey to become an agent for chaos. All dead friends and no play makes Jack a chaos boy. Swirling with dark miasma, Jack returns to the Pocket Dimension's entrance, the Chaos Shrine, and from there, enters Lufinia's entranceway, which looks like a wheat field. Oh, the random wheat field at the beginning was in fact Jack setting off from Lufinia. Neat. Now, however, Jack isn't interested in this lair and begins to break deeper into the core of the Lufinian systems. It's here, as he's preparing to destroy the base, that something wild happens. The real Chaos shows up, that's right. Chaos was totally real, and he's jealous of how chaotic Jack is, and he wants a piece of the action too. So Jack is like, cool, I'll kill you and I'll become Chaos for sure now. And he does, in a great boss fight that tests your abilities in one-on-one combat. Like, I know I've been mostly story for this section, but wow, what a great send-off of a boss battle. It felt really finely tuned and does a great job of making sure you learned all the important mechanics along the way. I really hope you mastered the Soul Shield when you get here. Now, pouring over with the power of darkness and having become Chaos proper, Lufinia is rightfully intimidated. Jack uses this opportunity to get in some premium evil laughter. After he gets it all out of his system, he begins part 2 of the plan. He's gonna keep looping time, testing heroes, refining their strength until he can hone a true warrior of light, someone capable of saving the world in a way he couldn't, and freeing the world from Lufinian control. He goes back in time and begins a plan to make an adventure that would test 4 warriors of light to the fullest. Now in the past, Jeb, Ash, Sophia, and Neon meet Jack by his side. They're ready to embrace darkness as well, and take on their new true forms. They are the 4 elemental fiends. And Jack Garland was Garland all along. I mean, we kind of figured that out, but yeah. Now all that's left is to defeat the Lufinian cycle by making Warriors of Light so strong, even Jack couldn't defeat them. And that's where the story ends, teeing up the events for Final Fantasy I. Sound like I dropped a lot on you there? Well, the story of Stranger of Paradise can sometimes stumble around because it relies on a lot of big, dramatic moments. For the most part, you'll just be enjoying the gameplay. The class system and the fighting all feel so good, you're not really paying much attention to the weird but charming story unfolding. Characters in this game like to tell you what's going on only on their deathbeds. That happens multiple times. This is all built on the relatively sparse lore of the first Final Fantasy. The original is an 8-bit, thinly plotted game about 4 guys who save the world by hitting things. In that game, Lufinia was a fallen kingdom that used to live in a flying fortress. No mention of DNA headwear or pocket dimensions, so it's safe to say they took some liberties with Stranger of Paradise. So then I'm made to ask, is this some sort of Dissidia multiverse stuff going on here? Why are all these dimensions named after corresponding games? Are they planning on linking them? Please don't link them. I don't need you to link them. I don't need any more multiverses. Not every media has to have a multiverse. Is this new version doing a disservice to the source material though? Does it break the story in any real way? Well, no. Honestly, the original game's story really didn't hold up to scrutiny very well either. As soon as you throw in time travel, as I've said on this channel prior, everything sort of turns into a logical mush, and Final Fantasy I mucks around with time travel-y bits. So, keeping that in mind, am I happy with what they did to the game? Well, it's complicated. A fleeting feeling of being let down is something I had to contend with occasionally for Stranger of Paradise. Jack can occasionally be a little too much, turning Garland, the villain who said, "I will knock you all down," into an action movie tough guy from a highly advanced race that likes to listen to Japanese Linkin Park on his AirPods. That's a lot to process. Sure, there were some blanks to fill in with Garland. Okay, more than blanks, he was paper thin. And here they fleshed him out. He's still a bad guy and ultimately goes about solving his problem using the wrong methods, so now he has layers. The older I get, the more I've come to realize that just because I like a franchise doesn't mean I have any ownership over it. It's really easy to get angry about things you like changing. It's easy to get upset that a company that you trusted got you doesn't really get you like you thought. Not every game is going to be made for me, sure, and some companies like to chase trends. I mean, this game's in the Souls-like genre, and that's a hot genre right now. It could be in it for the money, but I don't think that happened with Stranger of Paradise. Marketing execs can sometimes muck up a good thing. They add in a bunch of unfun decisions in the desperate hopes of grabbing your wallet. But if that was the case here, why did they make this game? The short and likely answer to me is they made it because they wanted to. You can't convince me the iron was hot to strike on that Final Fantasy I hype train. I think they just wanted to tell a story in its world for the series' anniversary. They had cool ideas they wanted to share. I don't think this game hates Final Fantasy I at all. I think it loves it. It's a painstaking love letter to the game, and it doesn't go places I would go if I were given this blank slate. That's okay though. I'm in no way obliged to think of this as canonical to Final Fantasy I's story, and the creators have agreed with me in several interviews, but even if it was canonical, I certainly don't love the first one any less. So once I get all that baggage out of the way and I met Stranger of Paradise on its own terms, it's kinda awesome. You can headbutt a dog into tiny shards of crystal. You can yell at enemies when they monologue too much. The protagonist lets the princess of the medieval kingdom listen to his Spotify playlist. The game just kinda plays by its own rules and tells a sort of stupid but lovable story with some actual emotional moments that had me smiling, cheering, laughing, and even tugged at my heartstrings. I'm talking about you, Astos' puppy eyes. All wrapped up in gameplay that includes one of the best job class systems I've had the joy to experience. So you know what? I hope they make another one. I hope they make an insane Stranger of Paradise 2, and it's about the Esper village in Final Fantasy VI, and I can be Madeline just killing Imperial soldiers. Stranger of Paradise as a whole had excellent combat and an overwrought story, and it happened to hit in all the right ways. It's right between a B-movie and an action masterpiece. Like many of the games I talk about and celebrate on this channel, Stranger of Paradise is flawed, but it's such a unique and audacious game, I can't help but admire it. Well, this video took a while to get ready. First I had a bit of a funk, and then I was very busy. Taxes or something, I don't know. In all earnestness, I'm hoping to continue to put out videos at least semi-regularly, and I have a plan for the couple next ones. Probably nothing as modern as Stranger of Paradise, but I was just so smitten with it I couldn't help but chat about it for a bit. Anyway, that is all I have for everyone today, so I hope you have a wonderful day, and whatever, I need a tagline. Hey, recommend tagline. If you've gotten this far, recommend a tagline for me in the comments. Don't do that. Get paid for work if I'm gonna make you do work. Demand money. Say you have a great tagline, but it'll cost $50. Tell me that in the comments. I won't pay, but it's good to know you know your worth. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your time, and as always, likes and subscribes are appreciated, not necessary. Just you hanging out is enough for me. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Oh, a bee.